Most time management and productivity approaches, they're designed for machines and not for people. So if you've struggled with time management and productivity, that probably means that you're human. Because here's the thing, we actually experience time as flow rather than as these minutes and these hours. So carving up your time into these exact chunks, it's never gonna feel like living. And the poet Mary Oliver famously asked, "Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" And I can guarantee you that no one ever, anywhere, ever answered that question with, "I want to follow a schedule. I want to schedule more of my time." That said, most people aren't living their most wild and precious life, and so many people feel like time is just slipping through their fingers. My name is Marisa Murgatroyd, and I've helped over 10,000 students build a business that expresses who they are while making more than $20 million online myself and traveling the world and living my wild and precious life. And perhaps for the first moment in my life, I can truly say that if I were to die today, I would die happy and fulfilled because I feel like I've done and experienced more in my 42 years on this planet than many people have the opportunity to experience in their lifetime. But when I finished college and when I first entered the workplace, it was not like this. I mean, I couldn't even sit at my desk for more than a few hours without longing to be out running on the beach with the wind in my hair or doing anything other than the thing that I really wanted to focus on. Because at the time, I didn't know how to work in alignment with my natural rhythms, in my creativity, in my flow, in the way that I really experienced time. It's like there was what I needed to do, what I really desired to do, what I wanted to do to further my life, and then what this part of me was asking to do. And the two things didn't feel like they were aligned because I was working on somebody else's schedule, not on my schedule or my experience of time. Since then, I've discovered how to multiply my time and take back my day without sacrificing my life. And I wanted to share the 5 things that I've learned that have allowed me to build a multi-million dollar a year business and really make my dent in the universe. So the very first thing that I discovered is that no schedule survives contact with an actual day. And let me repeat that because this is some serious life wisdom right here. No schedule survives contact with an actual day. You want to plan your day, you want to aim for the perfect day, but realize that there's no such thing as the perfect day. And one of my students came to me and said, "Marisa, I'm really struggling with creating this aligned action schedule that you're teaching me how to create, because here's what happens. I set aside a block of time to focus on my business or do something specific, but then my mom wanders in and her mom has dementia, and I feel like all my best intentions go out the window." And I said, "You know what? That's just life. That's just to be expected. Whether you've got kids or you've got a partner or you've got your parents or whatever it happens to be, or even a pet that wanders in, and you gotta allow for that because you're a human and you're not a machine." However, if you simply give up 100% on the idea of having a schedule and the idea of being able to multiply your time and take back your day, everything's just going to fall into chaos. So create a schedule and then accept that no schedule survives contact with an actual day. And that's gonna liberate you to try to plan and try to focus, but then just let go of control and allow life to happen as life does happen. But simply by scheduling and by planning, you're gonna get so much more done than if you don't schedule or plan whatsoever, because you already know in advance that that schedule and that plan, it's not gonna go as scheduled and as planned. Which brings me to point number 2. Which is don't ever try to take an all or nothing approach when it comes to time. You don't want to try to stick to your schedule 100%. All you want to do, at first at least, is aim to sticking to a schedule 50% of the time, which means either following the schedule that you create for your day for half of the day, or doing it half of the time every other day versus trying to aim for 100% compliance. Because life is not about compliance, it's about expression and living and fulfillment. And that doesn't always happen according to plan. But like I said, you still want to create those plans and create those schedules. And then once you get good at doing your schedule 50% of the time, because you're not worried about this all or nothing approach, you're not hard on yourself when you schedule something and you don't follow that schedule, then maybe you up that to 60%, 70%, 80%. And I think that's probably where you want to stop. No one wants to schedule themselves more than 80% of the time and not allow for those moments in life to just tap you on the shoulder and say, you know what? Take a moment to sniff the roses. Take a moment to look outside and watch the sunrise or the sunsets. Take a moment to connect with your partner, your loved one, in the hallway, so you're not like ships passing in the night, that you've got those moments of presence and connection. Take a moment to pet your dog or your cat and just feel their fur, feel their breath, feel their heartbeat on the palm of your hand. You don't want to miss that out because you're trying to stick to the schedule 100% of the time and say, well, no, it's not time to walk the pet. No, it's not time to sniff the roses. No, it's not time to watch the sunset, because that's no way to live a life. Remember, this is your one wild and precious life, and what are you gonna do with it? You're certainly not gonna follow a schedule 100% of the time, so don't even bother trying to create that all or nothing approach. Aim for 50%. Once you got 50%, maybe 60, 70, 80%, but don't ever, ever, ever try to schedule yourself 100% of the time. Because why even set yourself up to fail like that? And remember, you're human. And your experience of time is very different, which brings me to point number 3. And that is that time is actually an invention designed to keep the trains running, and it actually does not match our actual experience of reality. So this is one of my all-time favorite books, and by risking the coming across like a total loser and a total geek and a total brainiac on YouTube, this is one of my favorite books, as you can see. It's The Introduction to Metaphysics by the French philosopher Henri Bergson. And you can see it still has my Brown University kind of price tag here, and it's very, very well worn. But this is when I really discovered, reading this little, really thin book, is when I really discovered what time was all about. So time was actually invented during the Industrial Revolution because all of a sudden they had to keep the train schedules running. Like, how do you send a train off in France and have it arrive in Germany and know when you're gonna meet someone at the train station? You couldn't when there was no standardized notion of time. So they created this notion of time during the Industrial Revolution to really allow for that international travel, to allow for factory workers to know when to arrive and when to leave, to know when to meet your loved ones at the train station. But the interesting thing that Bergson writes is he writes about this this phenomenon called Xenos Paradox. And here's how Xenos Paradox works. Mathematically speaking, if you shoot an arrow at a target and then you try to divide the trajectory of that arrow into equal units of time and space, the arrow will actually never reach the target. It will never reach its destination because you actually cannot slice and dice time into these equal measurements. It just doesn't add up because time is based on our human experience of this phenomenon of the passing of life, the passage of ourselves, our perception through the world. And it doesn't even really exist. So when you understand that time is for machines, it's for trains, but it's not necessarily for humans, it's only invented to allow us to coordinate with one another and make sure that we can meet ourselves in this passage of life, it really liberates you to point number 4, which is really working with your own experience of time, your own productive flows, rather than being too attached to these linear notions of time. Because have you ever realized when you're enjoying yourself, when you're in the flow, when you're creating whatever it happens to be on stage, on camera, that time, it's like it speeds up or it slows down. It's like all of a sudden you blink and a day is gone and you did so much and you felt so much and you experienced so much, but you didn't even feel the time passing by. And you want that to happen. You want to allow that to happen, which is why the way I actually schedule myself is I leave the first half of my day from the time I wake up, which is usually between 5 and 6 a.m., all the way until 1 p.m. for what I call time traveler time. And this is where I get to be in total flow, where I just get to create and write. And usually I know what I'm going to create and write, but I don't like schedule myself to the minute. So then I get to experience time from my perception rather than this linear notion of time. And then only in the afternoon do I go into what I call the more time warrior experience, where I'm really like, showing up to meetings, going on Zoom, meeting people where they're at, in whatever corners of the world that they're on, and going into my scheduled time. So I do half a day of unscheduled block time where I can experience flow and creativity, and that feels like the multiplication of time. And then I do half a day in more scheduled time, which allows me to interface and meet with the world where they need to meet with me and when I need to meet with them. So I balance those two, and I get to have the best of both worlds, kind of the yin and the yang of time, the kind of time traveler, fluid time, the personal perception and experience of time, with the more rigid linear time that I need to maintain to be able to run a business. But if it were all one or all the other, things just wouldn't work. If I'm only on my own personal perception of time and experience of time, I couldn't make meetings, I couldn't hold webinars, I couldn't meet with team, I couldn't run a business, I couldn't be successful. But if I were only in this linear notion of time, I wouldn't be experiencing this wild and precious life of mine, and I'd be chopping off access to my creativity and just my own personal experience of time. So really, multiplying your time is about relaxing into the experience of time rather than getting stuck in the linear measurement of time. And I know these are big ideas and big concepts, and it took me reading this introduction to metaphysics to really get it, but it's super liberating to understand that there's science, there's physics, and then there's metaphysics, which is kind of that experience of what's actually happening in the world and our actual experience moving through life, and not get too stuck with the more rigid notions of things, so we can have that full expression of this wild and precious life. Now, the very fifth thing that I learned that really helped me build a multi-million dollar a year business and really feel like I'm enjoying every minute of my life is that you are the most important person in the world, just like I am the most important in the world, when it comes to your life and your time. So you may have heard that the main thing is to make the main thing the main thing, and when you make your life and your time the main thing, you can impact so many other people's lives, because you only have this one wild and precious life to live, and you don't want to miss the key moments of your life, right? By making everybody else's time and everybody else's life more important to yours. Now, that doesn't mean that you're superior to others or anything like that, or you shouldn't care about others, or you shouldn't be flexible with other people, you shouldn't meet them where they're at. But it does mean that you're not sacrificing your life, sacrificing your time for somebody else's agenda. My first mentor, Brendan Burchard, used to say that your inbox is nothing more than an organizing device for other people's priorities. And I feel like so many people live their lives aligned with other people's priorities, on other people's schedules. And that really cuts you off to this deeper level of knowing and this deeper experience, which is where you're truly successful and fulfilling business actually comes from. Because it's only when you're able to balance, the more fluid experience of time with the more linear experience of time can you unlock that fulfillment and that success, where you can really be in your genius zone, giving and creating and doing what you do best without worrying about hitting, things down to the minute, right? So those are the 5 things that I highly, highly recommend. And by the way, just like there's timing in life, there's also timing in business. And I wanted to point you in the direction of this free guide that I created that could help you not just find the right timing in life, but find the right timing in business. And it's the ultimate guide to choosing the right product for the right market at the right time to open the income and impact floodgates. And you can find a link in the description below, and I highly recommend that you go check that out. Okay? So there's timing in life and there's timing in business. So what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? If you want to go deeper into really understanding how to live every day of your life with the most amount of productivity, with the most amount of fulfillment, the most amount of enjoyment, I highly recommend you check out my other video on the $1 Million Morning Routines, because when you start your day right, usually it keeps going right all the way until your head hits the pillow. And I also recommend you check out my video on the most powerful mindset of success, because how you spend your time, how you spend your life is going to determine the quality of your life. So you can also look back and feel like you've truly, truly lived at the end of the day, and that your one wild and precious life has not gotten away from you. So go out there and live your message.